The Marilyn Method is a mnemonic method for easily remembering the meaning and pronunciation for any Chinese character. It was first outlined in a blog post on the blog Country of the Blind in 2012. Since then, the basics of the method have been used not only within HanziHero, our character learning application, but in other products such as Mandarin Blueprint. In fact, the existence of this very method is what inspired me to make HanziHero to begin with, and is the reason why I know thousands of Chinese characters today. The Marilyn Method can be divided into two parts. The first is the main insight of the method, which is how to make the single syllable pronunciation of any Chinese character memorable via a system of mnemonic associations. That'll be what I cover in this video. The second part is how to weave the pronunciation, components, and meaning of a character into a single easy to remember mnemonic story. I've already covered this in my video about how to easily remember any character, so if you haven't watched that, I recommend watching it after this video. Let's begin with a brief overview of the problem that the Marilyn Method aims to solve. Each character in Mandarin has a primary meaning and pronunciation. One knows a character if they can easily recall its meaning and pronunciation upon seeing it. Given that one needs to know thousands of characters, it is all but required to have some sort of mnemonic system for remembering all of this information. Remembering the meaning is actually a fairly easy task. The most popular way to do this is to split a character into its components and to assign each component a name. Then one can weave the names of the components together along with the meaning of the character to make a memorable story. For example, this character means good and has the components woman and child within it. We can combine those together into this mnemonic story. It is good for a woman to be with her child. Then each time one sees this character, they can look at the components within it to remember the mnemonic. If they remember the mnemonic, they can get to the meaning of the character. It's a bit silly, but it works amazingly. However, this approach is not suitable for remembering character pronunciation. There are three main reasons for this. The first is that character pronunciations are not sufficiently clear to our foreign ears. When we see the components child and woman, it is pretty hard to mix them up. But most beginners struggle to hear the difference between lu and lu, or u and u. And even if they can hear the difference that something is different, they will not be able to pinpoint exactly what differs, or to know how those differences in pronunciation are even formed. If something is not clear to us, we simply won't be able to remember it correctly. This can be remedied by focusing on the Pinyin transcription itself. After all, it uses Latin letters just like English does, albeit with some strange quirks. This way we can easily see the differences between Pinyin syllables even if we can't always hear them. This leads to the second problem. Even when what we want to remember is now clear, it is not very memorable. Components, most of which are pictorial in nature, can be pictured with our mind's eye and made relatable and distinct. But how exactly do we picture or remember something like xiong or zhi or er? The only way to do this is to assign an arbitrary association to each of those syllables, which could then be included in our story, which culminates in the third largest problem. Even if we have a memorable association for each possible Pinyin syllable, there are simply too many to assign associations to. Taking into account tone, there are around 1,200 possible Pinyin syllables. It is simply not feasible to assign an association to each, even if we somehow find a memorable system for doing so. To summarize, the three main issues that make pronunciation hard to remember are the sounds themselves are not distinct to our ears, the Pinyin syllables are hard to make memorable, and there are too many Pinyin syllables to create a system of associations. The Marilyn Method was created to solve these three issues and in turn make pronunciation memorable for each character. It does this by splitting up the Pinyin syllables to make them less numerous and more memorable. It then assigns an easy to remember association to each of these Pinyin parts. Let's start with the process of splitting up the Pinyin syllables into more digestible pieces. This is simple and requires no great insight. The Pinyin system actually already has this built in. In Pinyin, each syllable has a tone, initial, and final. For example, hao has the initial H, the final ow, and the third low tone. So for each Pinyin syllable, we can break it up into these three pieces, which are a bit more distinct to our eyes and hopefully a bit easier to remember. Looking at this, you may think that this is just more work and creates more things to remember. After all, instead of having to just remember how, we now need to remember H, ow, and the third tone. Isn't that 3 times as many things? But it is actually over 10 times less information to remember. Huh? You see, there are only 21 initials, 38 finals, and 5 tones in standard Pinyin. That's only 64 items. These items are all we need to be able to represent all of the 1,200 or so syllables that are in Pinyin. In short, we've reduced the number of things we need to make associations for by over 1,000. Genius. Now that we have divided the Pinyin syllable up and greatly reduced the number of things we need to remember, we can assign association to each piece of pronunciation information. A good portion of these are fairly easy to do. For example, the initial H could be Harry Potter since they both begin with an H, or Homer Simpson, whatever is easiest to remember for you. However, some of the Pinyin finals have the same problem as a full syllable. They are too strange for us to make memorable. After all, what association could we assign to the final yang that would be easy to remember? That sound sound doesn't even exist in English, and the transcription doesn't look similar to any English word. To get around this, the Marilyn Method makes some minor adjustments to the system of pinyin initials and finals to make them easier to remember and associate. The exact details are fairly involved and finicky, but the gist of it is to eliminate some of the harder to remember finals like yang or yun or yong by replacing them with new initials instead. So for liang, instead of being L plus yang, and the fourth tone is instead represented by li, ang, in the fourth tone. These are easier to individually sound out and also easier to assign associations for. In HanziHero, for instance, we assign link to the initial li, since they both start with the letters li. In the final ang, which exists in standard pinyin, we associate a chapel because that is where angels are found, which begin with the same 3 letters. I go into more details about the general mnemonic creation process in my video about remembering Chinese characters, which I mentioned at the beginning of this video. If you want to learn more, definitely watch that video. If you want to use the Marilyn Method in your own studies, the easiest way to do so is to use HanziHero. We have broken down the sounds and components for thousands of characters already, created a mnemonic or association for each. We've also made an entire lesson and review system to make them as easy as possible to learn and remember, and to do so in an optimal order. Most importantly, we have thousands of vocabulary words to help you better understand and remember how each character is used in practice. I know it works because it is how I myself learned thousands of characters and achieved Chinese literacy. Anyone can start learning for free at HanziHero.com, so check it out. If you prefer using your own custom system with Anki or physical flashcards, for instance, then I still recommend you check out our custom pinyin chart along with our system of sound associations. We have those freely available on our website, allowing you to use them as you wish for inspiration as you make your own mnemonic system. The original blog post also lays out their own modified pinyin system, along with a system of associations that is worth consulting too. That's the Marilyn Method in a nutshell. I want to graciously thank the original author for creating and sharing such a genius system for remembering Chinese characters. Without it, I think I would have given up learning Chinese characters entirely. If this video was useful to you, let me know with a big thumbs up. If you want to see more videos about how to learn Chinese, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.